Attorney John Shea, speaking of Heather Catala.
I mean, you know, it was pretty teary scene in court after the verdicts were rendered. So he's feeling it.
I know he feels terrible for his son, but how is he feeling in relation to the RICO count against him?
Well, I haven't had an opportunity to ask him that, so I don't know. I think that his feelings are pretty much entirely right now focused on his son. It's also sort of an absorption process for everybody. I mean, you guys probably as well. We've been at this for a long time, and all of a sudden, you know, you come to the end of the story, and or at least the end of this major chapter of the story, and there's a sink-in time that I think has to be gone through before you really know how you feel about things.
John, there's a no decision on the RICO charge. Is it possible that your client could be charged again?
Sure.
Do you think that could happen?
I have no idea, Kevin. I haven't had an opportunity to say word one to the government about it. I have no idea.
It seems that either the jury didn't buy or they couldn't agree on the Rosendahl testimony and the RICO charge as it pertained to your client. Can you kind of take us through that?
They acquitted him on the Rosendahl count.
Right. So they completely did not believe him.
Yeah. So I'd say that they did reach a decision on that one. I don't know what role that played. I mean, it couldn't hurt, you know, in terms of the deliberating on the RICO count, at least in terms of those who were hung for acquittal. It must have helped, I would think. But, you know, a little bit of tea leaves reading there.
Yeah, but for the jurors, it shows that they said, look, we don't buy this as it pertains to Bernard. Kwame Kilpatrick, Bobby Ferguson, we believe some of the testimony against them.
Well, if you're trying to, you know, find a relationship between what substantive counts people were convicted of and not, and a RICO outcome, sure, there's going to be a relationship, but theoretically, every defendant could have been acquitted of all the substantive counts and still been convicted of RICO. You know, on the law and on the instructions. Is it likely? No, but it could happen. So what I'm saying is I can't read too much into where the substantive counts played in the RICO deliberations.
I was sort of getting at the credibility of the jury doing their job. It sort of seems like, you know, you come up with some not guilties and some we can't decides and some guilties. It seems like they were pretty thorough and looked at everything.
Well, I'm sure that there will be more information that comes out that you know, about how thorough they were. They worked hard.
What about this tax charge? Do you appeal it?
Don't know. I mean, I gotta, you know, we're not, you know, he's gonna get sentenced on it. I guess I have to wait until after that to make a decision about it. And also I have to, you know, we have to see what's going to happen with what the government decides in terms of whether they retry or not the RICO count.
They said it's a maximum of 3 years. Do you know what those usually mean? Are those usually probationary?
They're sentence guidelines driven, and they're not. It depends. And I can't speculate on that right now.
Will he have to serve some time? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't know.
What do you make of your client having been the one that was wiretapped, and yet they could not come to a decision on the biggest charge of all for him?
Boy, it's a good question, Heather, and I haven't thought about it. The government, obviously, at the time they were getting wiretap warrants, figured that they had sufficient grounds to obtain those wiretap warrants on Bernard and not on others. It's not necessarily true that the probable cause that gives rise to a wiretap warrant means that you have probable cause that the subject of the wiretap warrant is committing a crime. They're just looking for evidence. It could be that you have somebody who's innocent of a crime who's being tapped because the government believes that there's probable cause that the tap is going to reveal evidence of a crime that somebody else is committing. So I'll leave it to you guys who are going to write books to the irony of the rest of the question.
So did the video help show his innocence then?
Which video?
The video of Bernard taking money from James Rosendahl, did that show his innocence?
In connection with the Rosendahl count?
Yeah.
did him taking... I think you have to look at Rosenthal's testimony as a whole. I don't think you can parse it. That was sort of a complicated-looking puzzle, and I mean, obviously, when you saw the video and opening statement, you might not have said that looks like he's innocent. But when you heard the full story, it made it more likely that there was a justification for what was going on there from Bernard's point of view. I'm assuming that they took all that into account.
What about the jury essentially judge Rosendahl as a piece of fill in the blank?
I don't know. You know,
you were able to use
Rosendahl here. I don't know.
Let him have it. He pled guilty. He said he's guilty. Let him have it.
Well, you know,
here it comes, baby.
I don't know what they looked at. I really don't. And I've debriefed enough jurors in my time to realize that my beliefs about what they were looking at don't always correspond to what they were really looking at.
Was that Bernard's girlfriend in court today? He had a woman there who seemed to be very emotionally moved by this.
A very close personal friend.
How are you doing? This has been a long journey. I mean, I know you said your client's devastated by the situation with his son, but how are you doing at the end with this verdict?
I'm absorbing it like everybody else. I mean, that's what I'm doing. I'm absorbing it. I'm grateful that he wasn't convicted of more things. I mean, obviously, and I'm sort of hoping that, you know, this is the end of the road. But by the same token, I don't know if it's the end of the road or not. So I'm not gonna get too far ahead of myself.
What about the detention hearing? What's your best guess as to?
I don't know. I'm gonna go up there and see how things go. But I don't know what's going to happen.
How do you feel about the government saying that these two guys should go right? I understand that's not a common thing in federal court, but you'd know better than we would.
There obviously was some calculus that went into that, but I'm not sure what it is, and we'll. You know, you can ask the government that. I'm sure that they're probably going to be talking to you at some point.
Is it piling on?
I don't think it's necessary. I'll leave it at that. I don't think it's necessary. I mean, I'm not the government.
But each defendant will be taken separately here on this hearing.
On the remand?
I mean,
the defendants will be...
Yes. The judge will have to make a decision regarding whether or not to detain them individually, not as a group.
But they haven't asked to remand Bernard. He's the one they said they don't want to remand, right?
Well, yes, that's correct. They haven't asked to remand Bernard. So I'll be up there because
client's going to be there, right?
Well, I don't know if my client's going to be there.
I guess he wouldn't be on the dock, would he? He'd be in the
Correct.
stands.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
We'll be with you.
Did you get a? Well, you.
Thank you, John. Thank you very
Thanks,
much. John Shea talking to us live about the decision here in court today. His client faring the best of all of them, and obviously still a lot of shock, a lot for these attorneys to take in with today's verdict. It looks like Mr.